Hey, how's it going, YouTube? How y'all doing today? Yesterday it went from an excessive heat warning. It was like 105 or something like that. Then it started raining. It rained about maybe a quarter to a half an inch yesterday. I thought it was going to be more. It was coming down pretty hard, but it wasn't that big of a storm system. There was supposed to be a second storm system that followed up behind it, but it went the other way. So, yep. Right now, it's still looking like I'll be taking these animals to market this weekend. My ground is dry enough for me to pull a trailer back here. So as long as my ground is dry enough for me to pull a trailer back here, I'll start taking animals to market this weekend. Yesterday, I was taking a look around at different cattle feed wholesalers. I figured I would just see what's going on around here. And I found one person, I found one factory that grinds up, what is it? They grind up refuse. They grind up candy bars, cookies, potato chips, stuff like that. The refuse that the factories don't use for the human food, for people food. This factory will grind it up. They will mix it evenly with corn, then soybeans. They'll put a vitamin mixture in it. Then I can feed it to these cattle, is what they were saying. I was reading that candy bars, cookies, potato chips, stuff like that is real good. It's a real good way to put fat on these animals, and it's real cheap too. I mean, you know, a lot of people who live out in the countryside and who live out in the middle of the boonies, they get corn and stuff like that for pretty cheap. You know, I've heard that distiller grains are about $2.75 a ton wholesale. But me, I have access to this they call it candy meal, excuse me, but they call it candy meal. And it's about as cheap as distiller grains. So it's real cheap. I mean, it's $3.25 a ton delivered. And so, you know, I live within about 40 minutes of Dallas. And so they have a lot of this stuff. They have this ground up cookies. They call it a candy meal. But it's candy, like chocolates, it's cookies, and it's potato chips that they've been discarded by the factory. And so they grind it up, and then they mix it with corn, and they mix it with soybeans. And they were telling me that if I have cattle on grass, if I feed cattle grass, and I feed the candy meal to these animals, they're gonna get fat real fast. They told me it's real good stuff. And I believe them. I would think that if I fed these animals a whole bunch of cookies and chocolate, that they would get fat. Because I mean, that's a lot of fat and a lot of sugar. And so, yep, I'm thinking about that. You know, it's about 10% cheaper than, you know, because the other feed that I can get, the stuff with the corn and the alfalfa and all that stuff in it, it's $3.55 a ton delivered. And so, and yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it. You know, a part of me, I would rather, you know, I wouldn't mind feeding these animals ground up chocolate bars and ground up cookies. You know, they probably really like it. You know, I know that there are you know, like in Oriental countries, they feed animals alcohol, like sake, soju, beer. They feed cattle that stuff. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but you know, in other parts of the world, they feed animals that kind of, you know, particularly in Oriental countries, they'll do that. They'll feed animals alcohol. And so, you know, I figure it's about the same thing. It's just a way to put extra fat on them. And you know, fat is good. You know, fat in cattle meat is a good thing. And so I'll think about that. But here's, you know, when it comes to animal feed, okay, so grass, right? I always say grass is my cheapest, highest quality resource. And the thing about grass is that when I grow grass, when a person goes and buys a roll of hay, a bale of hay, okay, you know, because I grow hay, that, you know, that's one of the things that I do. So I know how much it costs, and I keep a very, very, very good eye on my expenses, on how much it costs me to grow my hay and stuff like that, and how much I grow. the biomass produced, etc., etc. I keep very good record of that stuff. And so when I look back on my records and I see what it cost me to grow hay cost me about $10 a roll. Excuse me, $10 a ton to grow. I can grow hay here for about $10 a ton. And when someone goes out and buys a roll of hay, what I call a roll of hay is 1,000 pounds of hay. So half a ton of hay, that's what I call one roll. When someone goes out and buys a roll of hay, what they're paying for is the equipment that it costs, that it took to roll that hay up, to cut that hay up. And then they're also paying for the trucking. Most of the money is not going into paying for the grass. Most of the money is going into paying for the services that it took to roll that grass up. And so, I can grow hay for about $5 a roll. It takes me about 30 days to get a flush of grass. I can get about 5 tons an acre, and it costs me about $50 an acre to grow it. $50, $60 an acre to grow it. So it costs me about $5 per half a ton of. It costs me about $5 per ton of hay. So if I get 5 tons and I pay, or it costs me about $10. Excuse me, it costs me about $10 for a ton of hay. And so even if I can get feed for real cheap, let's say I can go and I can get, let's say I live out in the boonies and I live next to an ethanol plant, and they sell me dried distillers grains for $2.50 a ton, or $2.25 a ton, right? And oh my God, I can get a third. I can get my feed for a third cheaper. Well, if I grow my own hay here, I can produce a higher quality animal feed for pennies on the dollar. I can grow a ton of feed for $10, and that's the advantage of growing grass. And that's why I've said it, and I ain't saying this to like be a dick. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying this because it's reality. If someone wants to go and run cattle, they need to learn how to grow grass first. The cattle, I wouldn't even bother with it unless I knew how to grow grass first. Because that grass, I can gauge the amount of protein in it. I can gauge the amount of digestibility in it by growing it to a certain point, as well as growing a different variety of grass, etc., etc. And if I grow grass, I grow it for about $10 a ton. And these animals walk around and they harvest it for me. I don't have to worry about baling. I don't have to worry about doing any of that stuff. I just grow it and let the animals out on it, and they'll go around and they'll chew it up themselves. And so I don't have to pay for any equipment. The animals are my equipment. And and I was running the numbers on my grass, right? And I was like, oh man, I lost about a third of my planting density, maybe about 25% of my planting density, because these animals have trampled my grass. Well, 25% planting density, if I reseed my field at 25% planting density, that's $10 an acre of seed, $15 an acre of seed. So it cost me $30 to fix up 2 acres. But that's what I'm saying. When it comes to the cattle feed, grass is the cheapest, the highest quality resource. If I need a higher protein grass, I'll graze it sooner and I'll put more nitrogen fertilizer on it. If I need a lower digestibility, lower protein grass, I'll just grow it out for longer. If I need a high energy, low protein grass, I'll just chop it for silage. There's all sorts, but when I grow the grass myself, that's when I have the opportunity to make money like this. Like, I'm essentially selling grass. I don't even sell cattle. In my mind, the cattle that, I'm essentially just selling grass. Because, grass, if I were going to grow hay, it cost me about $50 an acre a month, $60 an acre a month to grow grass, to grow a flush of grass but that's one of the big downsides of growing grass is that I don't get to just get grass whenever I need it. It needs to rain. And so that's one of the huge downsides of grass. Look at this animal right here. He about ready to he about ready to go to a feedlot right here. Maybe about 3-4 months on this one. This little guy. But but I don't get to choose when my grass grows. That's the big disadvantage of grass, is that I need water. I can put the $50 of fertilizer on the field. I can put the $15 of seed on the field, but if I don't get any rain, it ain't gonna do nothing. And so that's the big disadvantage of grass. But grass is literally pennies on the dollar. I can grow, you know, I can go and I can buy ground up cookies, and I can buy ground up candy bars and ground up potato chips, and I can get that for $3.25 a ton. Or if I go pick it up, I can go get it for about $305 a ton. But if I grow grass, I can grow grass for $10 a ton. And so, you know, but you know, but that's the huge advantage of growing grass. And you know, hear about, well, one of the big things that I'm planning for by the end of this year is that I'm going to go and buy more land. Okay, because my big thing is if I can figure out a way to make $1,500 a month here, if I can figure out a way to make $1,500 a month here, and I go to the bank and I ask for a $400,000 loan, they'll give me that $400,000 loan for about $2,000, $2,250 a month. So if I'm able to pay $2,250 a month, I can go and get a $400,000 loan from the bank. And if I make $1,500 here and I go and take the $400,000 and buy myself 50 acres, that means I only need to make $750 a month on the 50 acres if I combine my assets. And so I can farm, you know, I can farm larger acres, and I can use the cash flow from this property to cover a large portion of the debt expense on my on the new property, until the new property starts producing a cash flow. Which, you know, if I was put on 50 acres right now, you know, me personally, I ain't saying everybody, but me personally, if I was put on 50 acres right now, I can get it growing grass in one day. If someone gave me 1 day on 50 acres, I would have the whole thing growing grass by the next day. You know, that's the reality of the situation. And so if I went and got 50 acres, I could get it done very quickly too, and it wouldn't be no fiddle farting around. And so, you know, by the end of the year, I'm planning on buying more land. And I'm going to take the cash flow from this property to cover a large portion of the debt expense on my new property, and then use my income. You know, if I need an extra $500 or so, I'll use my income to cover the debt expense, the rest of the debt expense, until that property starts producing a cash flow. And then I can use the cash flow from that property to cover the debt expense on that property. And if I wanted to, I could go buy more land after that if I felt like it. But, you know, that's it for me today, YouTube. Y'all have a good one.